Hey everyone, I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to all for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. From the heart, gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to this video to help the message get out a little bit more as well. And do please know that the message is now out on writing in a form of a book on Amazon. For those that like to read, do please check it out. Thank you to everyone for your love and support. And gracias, Gabe Morales, for making it possible. Anyways, everyone, getting into what I want to talk about today is on this one, I want to speak more so about a camarada, right? That he was definitely one of the most political comadre individuals I ran across. And I don't mean no disrespect to where he was from or anything like that, right? I'm just speaking about him. But anyways, I want to talk about also, from El Centro. And he was an older cat. We're talking about 2008, somewhere around there. And he was working for Cheeks or Richie, however you want to name him, right? From San Diego, the Señor. And he skated by. What I mean by this is, for those that are aware, Richie, he had a whole crew of people functioning for him out there in Imperial Valley, in El Centro, and other places. And there was a big RICO case on him, between 2005 and 7, somewhere there. And this individual I'm speaking on, also, right, he skated by. What I mean by skating by is, I guess the Federicos didn't have him on the list to be picked up and trial as the Rico, but he was there in a spot where they hit, and he had material and a gun on him, right? And basically, he was one of a couple individuals that would end up hitting the state instead of the feds. And the reason I know about him is because I mentioned it before. At the same time, when it came to Otay, San Isidro, and that area, at one point we were doing things together. More so, Richie with Familia, right? It's kind of when it went south and they left Gloria to hang and dry. Is when basically my Familia pulled out, right? But that's a story for a different time, and it's how I came across Oso. He was out there doing his thing. For those that know this older Oso, his last name was Diaz, and he had two distinct marks on his chest. Three, right? Like bear claws, but they were scarred, they weren't tattoos. And I don't want to really get into what he was doing for the movement, right? But he was doing things. And again, he would get busted in that Rico case, but he skated by and hit the state. More so, he hit the main line in Pelican Bay, around 2007, somewhere there. And then, while he was there, he was he was moving, right? He was one of a few individuals that were, I was helping coordinate to the movement of a pedazo here, a pedazo there, for cheeks and others from SD. Like I mentioned, around this time is when Sherm was gone, and there was a lot of chaos in the air. We'll just leave it like that. But Cheeks, he had his people, couple camaradas, right, on the linea, and this included this individual. Well, I used to receive them appeals, and a lot of them, to be sincere, they weren't never went past me because it was all comadre stuff. Hey, so and so for so and so is doing this and this. It was just mitotes. It was never even an issue. It was just basically telling the pili, for example, we're on the same yard, you're doing your thing for your pili, which is none of my business, right? But he seemed fit to let Cheeks know, you know, hey, so and so from this neighborhood is on this yard representing so and is moving so much weight, and he's all this, and it just comadre stuff, straight vecindad type of thing, right? Them ladies from the vecindad that get to talking while they're watching clothes, a whole bunch of he said, she said stuff, right? But nevertheless, within time, he was involved in that Rico case. And if he would have been smart, he would have known, at least for the first couple years, he had to lay low. Because squad is going to maintain a focus on you, an eye on you tough. Because even if you didn't go to the feds, you're still plugged directly to a RICO case that led to a Pili in the Bay, right? And nevertheless, within time, he would get caught with Fierro and some Jale. Well, he went back there to the shoe, and while he went back there, he knew there was going to be repercussions because of the Fierro. More so because you're on the yard, and even though I don't like to glorify it or really get into it, I'm gonna give you an example. When it came to Cheeks and this individual, I was helping him plug in full pedazos, and we weren't even giving 36 grams. It was 38 we were giving them, and we were giving them for $600. You know, they were being put where they needed to be put, and everyone else, even when the material was weak, at least at least 1,100, 1,500 for 36 grams. So at the end of the day, it was, well, when it came to family and stuff, they never lost. For those that know about chicharron out here, the prices. So that was never going to be an issue. The issue again was losing a fierro, because it was a yards fierro. And around this time, it had been a couple years where there was a lot of funny individuals that were out on the yard politicking, sticking their nose in business that didn't belong to them. And once a couple camaradas started shooting kites up to Pilis that, hey, this individual's getting in your business. He's bumping in, thinking he's más chingón que wow, and that the Pili he's representing is has a better hold on the yard. Just and he feels the rope around his neck. What they would do was exactly that. Have their pad hit on purpose and post a fierro and get caught up. and go to the back, do them little 10-month shoe, which in reality wasn't nothing. That's why you hear stories, for example, individuals say, "Oh, I went to the shoe for a fierro, off the back, you're gonna do at least 5 months in the hole. By the time you make it up to Pelican Bay, you're gonna do about 2, 3 months out of the 10 months, because you do 8 months out of the 10 months for a piece, Again, it had been a couple of years. This was a recurring event, right? From a lot of people that just felt the rope around their neck and they needed to get off the yard for a minute to throw the heat off of them. And it was mostly lifers. They had nothing to do. DA wasn't going to pick it up. More overall, you get caught with a fierro, you do your 10 months, 8 months in the hole, and then you get kicked out back to the linea. Those are facts. And if you hit the shoe, you weren't looked right if you went back there just to getting caught with the fierro, because you were losing something that belonged to the casa. And more so, a lot of people looked at it like, hey, you're PCing up. You're doing it on purpose to get out of a situation that's going weenie, right? But anyways, so he knew he had an issue coming, especially because he did not land where Cheeks was at. He landed where Tablas and them were at, and they started questioning everything. First off, the Hale, who were you moving the Hale for? That got clear. And then, how did you get caught with the Fierro? He said he had a headphones on, and squad just hit out of surprise the way they tend to do, right? And by the time he realized he didn't have a chance to flush or put all that in the cajuela, right? And he got caught with it, which it didn't sit well, but regardless, they allowed him a pass, or at least till he got out to the linea. Even though he was older, he was gonna get out to the linea and do his thing, but at the same time, if something needed to get done, he was gonna frontline it, which is more so what they always request, right? You lose a fierro, you're gonna pick up one and use it, or a lot of the times you're gonna get south siding, or there's one gonna be used against you. It's just pieces are gold on the yard, especially when you're on a yard that when it kicks off, it kicks off. It ain't gonna be a one 2 minute thing. It's gonna be constantly going up and down and boogieing. But anyways, again, this individual thought that the way to win Billy's was through his mouth, as many do, and sorry to say, Billy's look at that as a weakness, you know, just like cagapalos. You do something on the yard and you're constantly coming back to the shoe instead of planning flag and building something and start making feria for them, and you know that's more respectful than you going constantly coming back for whatever, pegada, uh getting to the huda, whatever it may be. You start being looked at like a crusted dummy and you're going to get treated as one, but this individual, he felt he should start throwing dirt on the individuals that got busted with him in that Rico. And again, I was in middle ground, so the directives from Richie were, hey, read from this individual, and if it's something I need to know, let me know. If not, there's no need for me to even pay attention to it. Just that simple. Me, I was nobody, so I had to screen him, right? And more so, I ended up passing all the wheelers that came through the next month because it was names, names and who, and they're the ones we got busted. I was at this house, they threw the heat when in reality, it wasn't even like that. That Rico case happened because Cheeks, Richie, sent out an appeal with directives and names. And that included neighborhoods, everything, and they got caught, and that's what spinned off that Rico case. And you guys know a Rico case ain't from today to tomorrow. The feds are gonna sit on that and keep building on it, especially if they get catch something from somebody that somebody specifically putting out names, neighborhoods, and debts, what they're moving. They have a foundation to grab on. But this individual saw fit again to try to get in and good with Richie and the other Pilis as well by throwing dirt on other camaradas. Keep in mind, the other camaradas are in their feds. There ain't really nothing Richie could do. Well, there is, but it was going to be a headache, and he knew it wasn't true. At the end of the day, he got the reports. It wasn't like he was stemmed from knowing exactly how everything went down, right? And there was this other individual from La Mesa that he was a good soldado for Richie. Traviesillo, Travieso, and this individual started talking masa about him. Like, hey, do you know this individual was using? He was telling you he was getting an ounce, but in reality, he was getting an ounce and a half, but it was going to his vena. When Richie had been doing a lot of dirt with him, and had a lot of trust for him, and that's what broke the camel's back. At the same time, to be sincere, by Tablas and others, Chino and them that were there, he started he started being known as a comadre, and that's the worst thing, comadre, and then self soldier, you're definitely done. But being a comadre, always trying to put down camaradas, politic against them, just to see if you earn brownie points and earn some respect. You're never going to earn it from a true individual, right? Because that's, you guys know what stuff. That ain't a sureño, a campolero ways of doing it. But anyways, even though he was sending Richie stuff and everything, Richie would end up getting hit by a couple other pilis on this facility and telling him this, hey, this individual can't see nothing because he wants to put in his 2 cents, his narrative, and at the same time, him always coming out like a chingon and putting down camaradas. You gotta remember, politicking allowed. Pilis do it because we ain't nobody to tell them different, right? They're always politicking against each other, but well, at least homies, we just gotta write it out. Even though it takes a lot of homies out the game because you support one side or the other, we still have no say so. But I want to make it clear when it comes to camaradas and you being a comadre and constantly politicking against another sureño and you're in the presence of a señor, that's going to be utilized against you. Definitely, you're going to be dead weight taking room. You're poison, you know? But to make a long story short, that would end up happening. He would end up getting kicked out back to the, I believe, B yard. And the minute he hit, there was actually a couple homies from La Mesa, and Richie was real clear with them. Hey, this individual tried to wash up Travieso with no foundation. I want him done, but done. I want him whacked, and if you can, these were the exact words, sáquenle la lengua por comadre. They didn't do the tongue part, but they sure went to town on him. And then, later on, where we went down to medical, like I mentioned before, he happened to be in Corcoran. And you know what's funny? That there's individuals like him that are always trying to wash up camaradas. And then when they hit, they still come and tell you, hey, Chino, why did you do that? I don't understand. I was doing everything right. And start trying to throw the bolita. But the best thing is, at that moment, if you want to be respectful, you say, like, look, also, that's not for me to decide. You know what happened? Dispensa, I can't address you. Con todo respeto, you know where to direct your status, and his name me. Because they're always gonna try to clean that up. Those are individuals that, due to their politicking, they're scared to go to the PC yards because they end up watching a lot of people through their mouth. It's what a lot of people call pencil whooping, right? Because you're in the shoe and overall you're putting everything down on paper. But anyways, that's the end look on this one, everyone. As you know, when you go in, be careful. There's a saying, just because you dressed up a monkey, put makeup on him, he would always be a monkey. What I'm saying is, don't trust nobody, even though he's from your neighborhood. For some reason, the joint prison tends to flare out different scenarios. You gotta be real cool headed and really love the causa sureña to actually, you know, show love and care for the homies. And there's individuals like this that will bring you close and will be taking notes on everything you do for the time that he needs to wiggle out of something. He's gonna throw you down the pipe. So be trucha. This happens constantly, especially now that you have Billy's on the yard. And I heard there's a whole bunch that they bent backwards to even have a conversation with them. That includes doing their homies dirty, doing the causa dirty, as long as they get away from it. And it's unfortunate, but again, that's an insight on how things are. Y bueno, mi gente, stay free, value everything that's loyal, homeboys, family. Most importantly, stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones.